With the not-so-recent reveal of Snuffy's backstory and the initial drive he had for finding a substitute to be Uber's king, got me thinking about the intentions of the masters within the Neo Egoist League. The fact that they chose to coach at the Neo Egoist League, all four of the ones that have appeared, seems to have a prodigy in the Neo Egoist League teams within the Blue Lock facility. The Blue Lock players that have sparked curiosity of the Masters have been highly bid by the real teams. Something that's worth taking note of here is understanding the interaction between Ness and Kaiser in Chapter 207 before we go on to the Master Strikers themselves. When Ness walked into the monitor room, Kaiser started mumbling about how he has crushed all the guys that dared to stand in his way. Clueless rookies, second-rate veterans, and face superstars as well. The only way he can be truly happy is through destroying other people's lives. Isagi Yoichi. Kaiser first saw him as an insignificant scrub. But in that last game, Isagi Yoichi has definitely surpassed Kaiser's expectations. Ness's answer to that was that he gave up trying to score to prove that he's more competent than Kaiser as a striker. But nobody would think so anyways for now because of the reputation Kaiser has built for himself. Kaiser doesn't get why Isagi Yoichi still dared to defy his absolute talent. Even though he has shown him their vast difference in strength, and even though he broke him several times, that guy just keeps getting back up like the zombie Don Lorenzo. The more obstacles that are in Isagi's way, the more excited he gets. And then he manages to clear the challenges by the skin of his teeth, an absolutely twisted individual. Now, pay attention as the juicy bit is about to come. After that, Kaiser asks Ness why he decided to play in Blue Lock, and Ness responded with that he was either trying to prove that he was equal to Noel Noah when playing alongside him. Although I don't think that really is a rational option for him anymore, because otherwise he would have just been duking it out with him in their normal matches within the Bastard Munchin Club. So I think that the more rational and probable reason is the second one, which is to use the Neo Egoist League as an auction system to win an even bigger offer so that he can force his way out of Bastard Munchin without it hurting his wallet. He continues, saying that anyone with half a brain knows that Bastard Munchin is Noel Noah's team and that it makes him just a secondary character. So right now it's impossible for him to become the world's #1 striker. That's why he decided to boost his brand and play in the Neo Egoist League. But Isagi Yoichi has grown above his expectations like the Chad he is. So he tells Ness that if he can devour Isagi, his global brand will skyrocket through the roof, as he gets excited that Yoichi is an actual proper obstacle for him to overcome now. This interaction demonstrates that Kaiser had chosen to be there, which is going to be huge for the rest of this theory. And Kaiser being able to make this decision also sparked my own curiosity on what those Master Strikers' reasoning would have been. The people that have higher levels in prestige must have far better contracts to get to choose too, basically talking about the top 5. Later in Chapter 215, we get to see Snuffy and Baru's interaction before the match has even started. Mark Snuffy has gotten interested in the egoist Baru Shoei, as he tells Snuffy that he didn't come here to play a weak-willed brand of football. He walks onto the training field and praises Baru for his shot, and that his physical specs are top-notch as well. Looking at the data among Ubers, he is the most suited for the striker position. So he asks Baru to try his football philosophy, even if he's faking it. Baru wasn't too impressed with him and wonders how he can call himself a master. He declined Snuffy's offer and tells him that for him, football isn't a job. It's a way for him to become more like a king. He's going to conquer the world his way, so if he'd want to utilize him, then he'd have to adjust to Baru Shui's football philosophy instead. And here he solidifies his interest in Baru even further. But he tells him that he thinks too highly of himself as a genius elite who is better than everyone else on the field. He tells him that before you're a footballer, you are just a person, and that if he can't even understand that difference, he's just an amateur. In the end, he's been living his life belittling those he felt that were untalented. Snuffy tells him that his talent is a gift that his parents handed to him. If he can't even understand that, he can't call himself a pro footballer. Baru ridicules Snuffy in response, telling him that the stuff he's telling him is utter nonsense. If he just thanks his mom and dad, he can become the best player in the world. In that case, he's going to become the most ungrateful world's #1 striker. Snuffy told Baru that there was a time where he was just like him, relying and getting by solely off his talent. And alongside him was his best friend. They took full advantage of the wealth and luxuries that come with becoming a superstar player, and they believed that they were going to be the kings of the football world. But they messed up. They started skipping training, and their skills diminished. They suffered injuries due to overworking and lost their place in the starting 11 and got into several scandals. When a man falls, it only takes an instant, he says. Baru responds with what some loser's story has got to do with him. So Snuffy told him that his spirit shattered and his best friend committed suicide as a result of that, which made Baru surprised. He asks Baru if he would be able to love himself if he's no longer viewed as a genius, which is where his thought process of before you are a football player, you are just a person came from, regardless of whether he's talented or not. After that, he asks Baru Shui if he wants to work together with Snuffy, and if he's interested in succeeding him as the next king of Ubers. This interaction pretty much tells me that Snuffy's reason for being in the Neo Egoist League is to find someone who is willing to succeed him, especially since he's edging closer to hitting the retirement age. But later on, he changes his mind about retiring as a player due to Baru Shui's persuasive skills. But this decision does raise the question, how much time is there left for him to play at his prime? Let's base this on Noel Noah's age. He's currently 31 years of age, and since they are all of the same generation, with the exception of Julien Loki, we can argue that all the 4 masters we have seen until now have similar ages. If we compare them to real-life players, we can see that they are already edging closer to the retirement of their careers already. Messi went to the United States League at the age of 35. Pelé joined the United States League at the age of 34. Neymar signed to the Middle East at the age of 31. Zidane retired at age 34. Müller left Bayern Munich at 34 and retired 2 years later. Iniesta left Barcelona at 34. Ronaldo of the past went back to Brazil and was already thinking about retiring at the age of 31, but he retired at the age of 33 instead. Cristiano Ronaldo, however, left the European League at the age of 37, but he's an exception due to his disciplined care with his body, much like the master striker Cris. Even if the Blue Lock players manage to secure a spot on the main team, which is something that only a few players of the next generation 11 have been able to do at their age, they will not be able to play with their masters again, with Loki as an exception, since they're going to have to play in the U20 World Cup first. And with the World Cup after that being 4 years in advance, which would be 2022, it's pretty much impossible for the Blue Lock players to play against their master strikers inside an official match. Therefore, I think that the master strikers are not looking for teammates, but rather substitutes or their spiritual successors for when they retire from football. But now comes the crazy part, though. Who is going to succeed each one of them? So let's start with the most obvious one, being Bachira to Lavinho. In chapter 160, we can see that Lavinho said that he isn't going to teach football to anyone, even though this place was made to create the best striker in the world. But he tells them that he's the best and that he's not going to give out any hints. Bachira fires back, telling Lavinho that Noel Noah is actually the best striker in the world as of right now. Lavinho doesn't like that and asks Bachira if he's picking a fight with him and tells him that he doesn't care what anyone else says about him. The best player will always be me. He has the best in that head of his. Cristiano Ronaldo actually is the same on this point, which he had explained in an interview. But anyways, Lavinho tells Bachira that it's not something anyone else can see, and that the image exists with him alone. If you want to become the best at something, you can't just do as you're told. He tells them that back in Brazil, they have a word called ginga. The meaning would be closer to swaying, and it comes from capoeira, which is a mix between dancing and martial arts. Swaying the upper body as if it's lethargic while touching the ball as if it's absorbing them. The Brazilian stars he liked had their roots in this kind of rhythm. You can start out by copying strong dudes and mix up to create your own image of the best in the world. Their original style starts here. Lavinho uses the image of a butterfly, the field is his stage, and all he can do is dance and be the best in the world according to his imagination. Football is all about improvising at the moment, and it's also about stealing the rhythm to one that pleases you. and the first one to respond to Lavinho's words was Bachira Maguru, as Lavinho tells him that he gets it. He can't tell how Bachira becomes the best in the world. The only one who can express that image is you and no one else. That privilege is given to someone by one's originality, and all that new training here is to support it. As Bachira sees what his movements look like, from this first interaction alone, we can see that Bachira is most suited to be Lavinho's successor. Later on in that chapter, Bachira tells Lavinho that he has this thing he can see, which is called a monster. And Lavinho responds with that he's got neat roots and realizes that that is his original brand. But as we all know, Bachira has gotten stronger by overcoming that monster. But in order to get even better, he asks Lavinho about what kind of image he should come up with. Lavinho asks Bachira if that monster has vanished, but Bachira told him that if he'd want to, he could bring it up again. So as a response, Lavinho tells him to evolve that monster of his to the next level. That monster is the thing that's going to guide Bachira to his originality, to let him reach the spot of the world's best. And out of Lavinho's advice, he has formed his new dribble style, the Brazilian Ginga combined with his monster. When Snuffy introduces himself in chapter 214, he wanted to ask the Ubers players the question, "What does football mean to you?" In response, they all tell him that they're basically betting their entire lives on it. Snuffy responds by saying that they're all very pure and teenage answers. But then he asks them another question. What would they be doing if they couldn't turn pro? What would they have left if football were to be taken away from them? There is nothing wrong in devoting yourself to football because you love it, but injuries and setbacks do happen. So he's asking them, what would you do if one day, for some reason or another, they were no longer able to play football? Those who can't answer that question will forever be dreamers and amateurs. This point was also highlighted in his flashback with Baru Shui. For a professional, winning is a duty and an obligation. Through winning, we are able to earn money and put food on the table. So he wants the Blue Lockers to remember this point. Football is a job. Think of a club like Ubers as a corporation. Based on that, games would be business deals, and the players would be the employees. He's taken data on every one of them, game plans, offense, defense, situational football, etc. All the various strategies are in front of them. Aiku asks Snuffy if he came up with all these strategies by himself, and Snuffy confirms that to be the case. He tells them to execute it flawlessly, and they'll definitely win. But in the event they were losing because of a strategy that he didn't anticipate, all the responsibility goes to Snuffy, the president and coach of the football team. The employees aren't to blame for it. He tells the Blue Lockers to go about this as business-like gentlemen in order to become his strategy's arms and legs. Aryu says that it pretty much resembles joining an army, and Nico tells the guys that it's a rather interesting way of thinking. All of his strategies make full use of their individual capabilities, plus he has prepared different variations depending on the lineup. If they could execute them flawlessly, they'd win most of the time. If they managed to survive here, without a doubt, they would become exceptionally stronger. Neo Egoist was the first one of the Blue Lockers who recognized the genius of Mark Snuffy. All of this makes me think that Baru is actually not going to be Snuffy's successor, as their playstyles and their way of thinking are not compatible with one another. However, Snuffy does share a lot of traits and similarities with another one of his pupils, from his metavision to his ability to play multiple positions in the same game. In this instance, I'm talking about the egoist Neo Egoist. His flexible system with Don Lorenzo already shows that he's good at both offense and defense. This versatility of his can be greatly correlated to Mark Snuffy. Although I wonder if Mark Snuffy will teach Nico his jujutsu soccer style sometime in the future. But don't get the wrong idea here. All of this doesn't mean that he will just ditch Baru Shui. As he sees a lot of his dead friend in him, he doesn't want to change Baru himself anymore. But what I do think is that Snuffy will make sure that Baru doesn't go down the same trench as his dead friend. In Blue Lock, chapter 155, the Egoists get introduced to the master striker of the Bastard Munchin team, Noah, as Jinpachi Ego introduced Blue Lock Phase 2. Unlike the other master strikers we've seen so far, Noah didn't really say much at the start. He just left and let the Blue Lockers do an obstacle course to test how their specs compared to the other players. It's only after the first training got concluded that he starts to properly explain his intentions. This is Bastard Munchen's super rationality. He does not take invisible things like impressions or emotions into consideration. Only those who hold the proper numbers to win will be chosen as regular players. He'll take the data from the results of the training from their matches for all the 21 players here. Those who make it to the top 11 will be used in the matches. Bastard Munchen is a team that wins through logic, data survival based on numbers. After some intensive training, Isagi went to see Noel Noah in chapter 158. This conversation reveals more about how Noel Noah is put together, so pay close attention. Isagi asks Noel Noah what he needs to do to increase his ranking. Noel Noah asks him if he's dissatisfied with his training. Isagi doesn't think that way and tells Noel Noah that he wants to win against Kaiser. Noel Noah asks Isagi Yoichi what his weapon is. Isagi responds that his weapon is his direct shots. Noel Noah asks him what is necessary for him to use that weapon. Isagi responds that the use of his weapon is to get past his opponents and be unmarked near the goal. In response, Noah asks Isagi what the necessary plays are to do that. Isagi tells Noah that it is through having a wide field of view and having the stamina and focus to keep searching for a hole in the opponent's defenses during the 90 minutes of a match. Noel Noah asks him what kinds of abilities are necessary to achieve that reality, but Isagi doesn't have an answer. Noah tells him how he's unable to verbalize his own ideal self. But Isagi tells him that he can and that what he needs right now are a variety of players and a base physical ability to handle any type of opponent. Noel Noah asks Isagi if he gets all of that. Would he be able to beat him? Isagi doesn't really have an answer, so Noah tells him to review his entire way of thinking and that his own values already failed him just now. You cannot now know something about your own plans. Visualize an ideal situation that you can explain and verbalize completely. Not knowing means there is wishful thinking in Isagi's thought process, which is merely noise, and that lack of logic can destroy any plan. He does not choose people like that to be regulars. Isagi asks him what it is that he lacks right now, so Noel Noah keeps hammering on that he needs to review his way of thinking. He asks Isagi what the first thing he does during the morning is. Is your first action something that brings you closer to being the best in the world? Is every moment, second, minute, and day of yours really doing anything to get closer to becoming the best? And this, ladies and gentlemen, is Noel Noah's philosophy. Blue Lock is a place to create the best in the world, is it not? Bring me an ideal that can win against me. And that ideal would be none other than Isagi Yoichi himself. In chapter 192, which is Bastard Munchen's match against Manshine City, when Cris and Noel Noah used their star-changing system, Noah told the Bastard Munchen players that he'd ally himself with whoever plays the most logically. In chapter 199, Isagi seemed to be out of options with his quest to score a goal because he said that he lacked the physical ability to utilize Mata Vision at its full power. But that wouldn't be too long, as Noel Noah decided to ally himself with the egoist Isagi Yoichi, which means that Noel Noah thinks that Isagi has made the most logical place. Now that he is here, his options increased exponentially, and Isagi is thanking him for that. So he asks him that if all of those options could be achieved realistically, Isagi responded that they are. So Noel Noah asks him if there are any wishful thoughts such as, "I don't know." But Isagi told him that's not the case, but he can see so many options that he doesn't know which is the best. In response, Noel Noah tells him to get rid of unnecessary noise and that he's too greedy. He tells him to streamline his thought process and to think logically. In this very moment, what does the egoist Isagi Yoichi desire the most? And his response was that he wants to crush Michael Kaiser. It's especially this interaction that got me completely convinced that Isagi Yoichi is going to become Noel Noah's successor. Now, this one is where the craziness peaks and will probably become the center of attention. In chapter 170, we get a proper introduction to Cris Prince, his character, and philosophy. The philosophy of the Manshine City team is speed and rush, and he tells them that only a healthy body can harbor the madness to change the world. After that, he tells Chigiri what he hoped for when he chose this team. His response was that he wants more power and speed. So he starts touching Chigiri and is able to point out the main characteristics of his body, which, in his case, are developed hamstrings and quadriceps. He's a speedster-type attacker. And then he continues to do that with all the players. He understands their talents now and sees how they've got so far, but they all rely too much on their talents, and when you don't take care of that talent of yours, it withers. So he gives this analogy where he tells them, let's take someone with a talent to run fast. It's not something taught to them by anyone. They simply acquired that talent naturally thanks to their body's disposition. In order to become a better player, that person desired the power to be like a tank. Their body was previously developed to only be able to run fast. So this training was like putting on a suit or armor to a body like that. As a result, they got slower and lost their balance thanks to the excessive muscles and became a worse player. If you lust for power while not understanding the mechanism of your own talent, you might start training blindly and end up with a body completely unbalanced, thus making your talent wither instantly. You would then lose your identity, break your mentality, and be completely done as a player. It happens all the time in the world of talent when a genius vanishes completely. Being successful while still not understanding your mechanism can turn into a curse that brings you suffering. Cris was like that in the past as well, but that's not how pros are and think. What kind of muscles can bring out your talents and help you create the players you want? A professional is one who understands and controls oneself. So after that, he strips his shirt off and tells them that this is what it looks like when you chase after it and obtain a perfect, unbeatable body. Only a healthy body can harbor the madness to change the world. Here in Manshine City, the Blue Lockers will understand the mechanism of their own bodies and start to feel their talents on their bodies. That's when you'll surely notice that you still haven't been making full use of your talents. The real reason you all are here is to awaken the unknown talent that still sleeps within you. And that was the point at which they started to begin their body revolutions. At first glance, it looks like the main relationship we will get in Manshine will be Cris and Nagi, since Nagi not only is a prodigy, but he's also a fan favorite. It's only natural to think that he will be the center of attention at the English stardom. But if you think deeply, you can notice that Cris's personality is completely different from Nagi Seishiro's. They don't share any traits on the playstyle and have basically zero connection as a result. So at that point, Cris just got him trained and thought by AGI. Cris is a perfectly balanced player in all stats and can extract 100% of the aspects that he has on his body. He's also a highly energetic guy when motivated, and he loves to talk about money. So the blue lock equivalent to him wouldn't be Nagi, but Ryo Mikage instead, as Ryo is also an all-rounder. Of course, Ryo is kilometers away from Cris at this point and also isn't as naturally gifted as him. But if you consider that he can't go 100% on anything properly but can do everything, he can never become the number one, as Cris also couldn't himself, but he can through the gift of someone else. You can even add the fact that all of Nagi's plays all started with Ryo Mikage, as making his own plays started from zero, which was too bothersome for him. Ryo also has shown signs of his metavision ability that is also used by Cris. Nagi lacks that, so Ryo Mikage can even surpass a flaw that Kaisers' vision has. The comprehension of egocentrism that Isagi understood and incorporated, plus the fixation that both Cris and Ryo have with money and comical faces, but that might as well just be a joke that they both share. With all of that out of the way, we could say that Bachira is the successor of Lavinho, Isagi the successor of Noah, Nico the true successor of Mark Snuffy, and Ryo Mikage the true successor of Cris Prince. They could become the spiritual successors of their playstyles or even become direct substitutes for when the master strikers retire. For those of you who have watched all the way to the end, I love you so much, bro. If you resonate with my content, feel free to subscribe and like the video. I'm out. Peace.